So, Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you all, and thank you very much for joining us at this CFS event on scaling up agriculture innovation, opportunities to deliver for people, nature and climate at COP26. This event is jointly organized by FAO, the CGIAR Research Program on Climate Change, Agriculture and Food Security, CCAFS, and the United Kingdom's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO. So welcome everyone. Let me just say a couple of words just to set the scene and explain the purpose of this event today and what we would like to get out of it. There is obviously an overwhelming recognition and evidence that transformation of agri-food systems is needed to help achieve the Paris Agreement on climate change, the SDGs, and also to help us protect biodiversity. But such transformation depends really on the scaling up of agriculture innovation to be able to develop and deploy agricultural practices and solutions and technologies at a much larger scale. And this is a particular challenge, but it is also an opportunity when we consider that today there is less than 10% of investment in agricultural systems that is currently being spent on agriculture innovation. So there are many opportunities this year that really present possibilities for raising the importance and scaling up of agri-innovation, namely the global events happening on climate change and biodiversity, such as COP26, COP15, but also the Food Systems Summit and the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration that will be launched on Saturday during the World Environment Day. So the objective of the event today is threefold, really. First, we would like to identify the opportunities and actions that we need to take to scale up agriculture innovation. Second, this is an opportunity to share views and experiences on how we can make actually this agriculture innovation happen and make it a key part of the solution to climate change emergency. And third, and given the context we are in, which is the CFS, we want to be able to also understand how this scaling up of innovation can help CFS implement its own policy recommendations on agroecological and other innovative approaches. And we're really pleased and delighted to have His Excellency Thawat Thiensin, who is the CFS chair, who will bring his perspective on this particular point. So we will start with opening remarks, following by a panel discussion, and we will invite you and encourage you to use the chat box to share with us your questions, your thoughts, and help us have this event dynamic and interactive and really productive and helpful to everyone to learn something new today. So to set the scene, we're delighted and honored to have three distinguished speakers with us today. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome and invite our first speaker, Maria Helena Sedemo, our Deputy Director-General FAO. Maria Helena, we're very pleased to have you with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zituni, and a very good morning, good afternoon to all. Ambassador Thawat, dear Terri Sarch, permanent representative of the UK, distinguished participants, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I am very pleased to welcome you to this side event on scaling up agriculture innovation, opportunities to deliver for people, nature and climate at COP26. 2021 is the super year for nature. As we prepare for the United Nations Food Systems Summit, the United Nations Biodiversity and Climate Conference, we have an opportunity to set more ambitious targets to transform the way we use our natural resources, we protect our biodiversity, and we produce and consume food. Transformation of agri-food systems is a key part of the solution. But for transformation to happen, we need innovation. At FAO, scaling up innovation is a priority to increase food security, protect biodiversity, restore our ecosystems, and tackle climate change. Let me share with you some examples. First one, FAO's hand-in-hand initiative and its geospatial data platform. They use big data and information to accelerate agriculture transformation and sustainable rural development, especially for the poorest countries. Together with Google, we launch Earth Map, which gives access to global agriculture, environment, and climate information for decision-making. It's a very important tool for decision-making. Our Climate Change Knowledge Hub provides information and data on climate change in agriculture and land use sectors from over 50 organizations, linking to learning materials, reports, guidelines, policy briefs, tools, and more. We also have the International Platform for Digital Food and Agriculture, which is an inclusive multi-stakeholder forum to identify how the world's food and agriculture sectors can harness digital tools such as e-commerce, blockchain, and artificial intelligence for improved pest control and crops production and early warning of food security threats. But in the context of digital solution, such initiatives are vital for leveraging the best practices that can shape a regulatory framework that maximize the benefits and minimize the risks associated with digital technology for food and agriculture. But ladies and gentlemen, we have the solutions, but the solution must be inclusive and equitable to drive agri-food system transformation. The accessibility is very important. We also must scale up gender-responsive approaches to digital skills development and access to digital innovation. We know that women have less access to innovation. This is much needed when we consider that on average in rural Africa, only 10% of households have access to internet. While, for example, in Bolivia, 15% of rural women reportedly use the internet, with that number failing to 0.6% of rural women in Niger. We see that we have inequality to access to innovation and digital transformation. Priority policy support must be given to the most vulnerable if we are to deliver on the potential for digital innovation to support resilient livelihood and more sustainable food systems. Dear colleagues, friends, dear participants, innovation is the driving force that can transform our agriculture and food systems. But to tackle climate change and address the loss of biodiversity, promotion of new technologies is not enough. We must build a positive relationship with nature to enhance resilience of agriculture sectors and boost family farmers' livelihoods. The restoration of terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems, the conservation of species and genetic resources, the sustainable value chain, but also change in consumption and production patterns are among the priorities that guide our work. Colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, collective, we can and must do more. And I thank you. Over to you, Zitouni.
Thank you very much, Maria Helena, for setting the scene nicely and highlighting how innovation is a priority for FAO, and also giving examples of some important tools such as the hand-in-hand initiative and its geospatial platform, the Earth Map, the Climate Change Knowledge Hub, and others. And the fact that, as you said, digital solutions are absolutely vital, but they must be equitable. And also thank you for highlighting the fact that innovation has to be accompanied with addressing our relationship with nature and addressing the restoration of ecosystems. So thank you very much for that. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome and invite His Excellency Ambassador Thawat Thiensin, who's the CFS chair and the permanent representative of Thailand to the UN agencies in Rome. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, moderators. Madam Maria Helena Sedemo, Deputy Director-General of FAO, my dear colleagues, Ambassadors Terri Sarch from the United Kingdoms, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to the organizers for this invitation to join all of you here today at this interesting topic of the side event at the CFS 48. Over the last decades, all of you know that the CFS has consistently called attention to climate change and other environmental hazards as threat to food securities and the lives and livelihoods of food producers, especially small-scale farmers and smallholders around the world. It has emphasized water and soil are the lifeblood of ecosystem and food securities depends on. And ecosystem degradation and biodiversity loss as significant challenges. And it has recommended action to protect ecosystem, manage land and water resources sustainably, and to address climate change also through all kinds of innovations, technological, social, institutional, and economic innovations. As you are not familiar with them, you also can take a look at the CFS policy recommendation on water and others on climate change, along with the others CFS HLPE reports that preceded them. And also for the next CFS 49 in October, we will continue debating on these two key CFS products on water and climate change. It's a good opportunity to all of you to discuss on these particular issues, how we can deal with this situation. And also, we need to do a great deal more, and we need more responsible investment in agriculture and food system. It is remarkable that the food productions has tripled in the last 40 years, but it has come at a huge cost for the planet and for humanity. We know that we cannot continue to produce and consume food in the way that we have been doing in the last few decades without causing extraordinary damage to our health and that of our planet. The dominant agricultural and land use policies incentivize overuse of land and soil, overuse of chemicals, deforestation, and degradations of carbon-rich natural habitats. Globally, more than half of the agricultural land we use is now degraded. I think all of you have seen it, or if you have heard that, and we need to think how we're going to mitigate the situation and how to reduce the effect of those. That's why we need to transform food systems, both the way that we produce and how we consume our food at the moment. In our effort to produce ever cheap food, our industrial scale use of antibiotics is exacerbating the crisis of antimicrobial resistance, which threaten millions of lives. While agriculture is now the second largest source of greenhouse gas emission after energy. All governments need to rethink the way they use public money so that they incentivize practices that protect rather than destroy human health and our natural world. The CFS policy recommendations on agroecological and other innovative approaches, which the committee will endorse tomorrow at CFS 48 special session, contribute to preventing future shock and being better prepared. And I would like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation for the effort and contribution and support that you make during the negotiation of this policy recommendation on agroecological and other innovative approach. I know that some of you work together and have a long discussion and negotiation until after midnight, until we could manage to finalize this policy recommendation. And I would like to express my appreciation to Ambassador Yaya from Nigeria for his leadership and also for his wisdom to help us come to the end of this final draft to be submitted to the CFS 48 tomorrow. We have a chance, indeed, a duty now to catalyze change at the UN Food System Summit at COP26 in Glasgow and beyond. Time to act is now. And we invite governments, farmers, and other stakeholders to rethink what innovation can help us achieve agricultural policies and practices away from destructions towards sustainability. Last but not least, please register and join us for the CFS 48 tomorrow. You know, we need quorum, because if we don't have a quorum tomorrow, we will not be able to endorse our policy recommendation. And that's why please register. And your presence at the CFS 48 tomorrow is very crucial. And at our plenary session in October as well, as I mentioned earlier, we will continue to discuss on these issues on water and climate change, and help us to ensure that the CFS and its valuable policy products and the HLPE report are referenced and utilized in the context of the upcoming UN Food System Summit, and also to ensure that the CFS products and others report of HLPE will be translated into action at the country level. Because if we don't have an action at the country level, we will not have any outcome of our times and resource that we invested during the policy convergence process. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to emphasize that each of us have responsibilities for these commitments, and the food security and better nutrition are within our reach. And you are the one who can make this happen. And we need your action now. And we trust on you that you can make it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your motivating and inspiring words. And we look forward to joining the CFS session tomorrow. And also very pleased to hear that for your next CFS 49 session in October, you will be continuing to debate the issues of climate change and water. So that's very much welcome. And thank you for highlighting the need for more investment in agriculture innovation and the crucial role of innovation in helping us to move towards sustainability. So we very much look forward to continuing to interact with CFS, and thank you very much for joining us for this event. The whole purpose was really to strengthen these linkages with CFS, particularly in the climate change agenda. And as you said, you know, all the major events facing us, we very much look forward to working with you and other partners really in raising the profile of the importance of innovation and the need to invest in it more. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now it gives me great pleasure to invite His Excellency Lord Goldsmith, who's the Minister for the Pacific and the Environment at the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and also the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs in the UK. And we're very pleased to hear from him from this video message that we'll play now.
Though I'm not able to join you, it's a pleasure to be able to say a few words on how innovation can help transform the way we produce food. And undoubtedly a transformation is what we now need. Since 2014, hunger has been rising. As a consequence of the global pandemic, it's risen still further to threaten almost 1 billion people. Now, it's clearly remarkable that food production has tripled in the last 40 years, but that success has nevertheless come at a huge cost. And it is obvious to anyone paying attention that we cannot continue to produce and consume food in the way that we have been for the past few decades without causing immeasurable damage to our planet. Massive soil erosion, hopelessly unsustainable use and pollution of water, deforestation, and the degradation of carbon-rich natural habitats. The damage done is catastrophic and fundamentally unsustainable. So if we're going to provide for those who are hungry today, let alone the 9 billion people who will share this planet by 2030, we need a very radical shift. At the UN Climate Action Summit in 2019, the UK launched the Just Rural Transition to help get policy and investment behind the critical shift towards more productive, profitable, and sustainable land use around the world. A major part of that involves rethinking agricultural policies and incentives. If you consider that each year the top 50 food-producing countries pour $700 billion into support for often destructive land use, that's roughly 4 times the world's aid budgets combined, and coincidentally, it's also roughly what scientists believe we're going to have to spend if we want to reverse environmental destruction and help nature recover. So imagine the impact if even part of this public support could be redirected to help farmers transition to climate-friendly and nature-positive land management. So I was delighted that at the G7 last fortnight, member states committed to leading by example by reviewing relevant policies with recognized harmful impacts on nature and to take action to deliver nature-positive outcomes. And as hosts of COP26, we want to increase investment in research, ensure public money backs innovation that supports climate, nature, and people, and develop new models, approaches, and partnerships. And it's great to see CFS focusing on agroecology, and it's time to scale up the good work that is already underway to help build more sustainable, more resilient food systems. For example, in Ethiopia, disease-resistant wheat now covers more than 60% of farmed land, and farmers in South Asia are already feeling the benefits of planting a flood-resistant rice. In Sudan, the switch to heat-tolerant wheat saw production double in just 5 years, and our work with CGIAR in Southern Africa has helped develop more than 200 varieties of drought-resistant maize, boosting yields by anything up to 30%. And alongside this important work, we are building global coalitions of countries committed to cleaning up agricultural supply chains, specifically breaking the link between deforestation and commodity production, which is responsible for the overwhelming majority of deforestation and therefore very significant carbon emissions. Now we have an opportunity to make use of this upcoming Food Systems Summit to bring these strands together and accelerate the process of renewal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Lord Smith, and thank you for adding to the argument and evidence about the key role of innovation for food transformation, as you said, that we need now. And very pleased to hear the statement, that we can't continue producing food and consuming food in the way we do that has a major impact on the environment and our health, and there is a need for radical shift. And very pleased to hear the outcome of the G7 in revising policies and delivering nature positive outcomes, and also the increase in investment in R&D in agriculture. So thank you very much for that. So this completes our opening remarks session, and I would like to thank again Maria Helena Sedemo and His Excellency Thawat Thiensin and His Excellency Lord Goldsmith. So thank you very much for helping us to set the scene before we move now to the panel discussion. And I would like just to remind people who are joining us to please place your questions on the chat. I will start with a set of questions for our panelists, but please do join us, express your views, your thoughts, put some nice and simple questions so we can have an interactive dialogue. So I'm very pleased now to move to the discussion session, the panel session, and I'm very pleased that we have with us 4 panelists. Her Excellency Terri Sarch, who is the UK Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the UN Food Agencies in Rome. Dick Nuwamanya Kamuganga, who is the President of the Uganda National Farmers Federation. Dhanush Dinesh, who's the Head of Partnership and Outreach at CGIAR Research Program on Climate Change, Agriculture and Food Security, the CCAFS. And Nicoletta Pavese, who is a manager at the Soft Commodities Forum at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So thank you all for joining us, and we very much look forward to an interaction, a fruitful interaction with you during this panel discussion. So you heard the opening remarks that sets the scene for the importance of scaling up innovation. And I would like to start with the first round of questions, starting with you, Nicoletta, given that you are part of the Food and Nature team at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, working on the role of agricultural innovation and technology to support sustainable agriculture outcomes. I just want to ask you the first question in relation to the UN Food Systems Summit, with the summit approaching. From your perspective, what do you expect from this summit when it comes to shifting the dial on innovation, as we heard during the opening remarks?
Thank you so much, and thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. I think reflecting on what everybody has said until now, the summit would definitely be an incredibly important opportunity to elevate the role of innovation. So as a very basic expectation, to have this topic elevated at a key level and discuss moving from dialogue to concrete solutions. I think this would be a very important element, and really much bringing all the different agendas together, balancing environmental, social and economic outcomes. I think this is something that we are hearing a lot with our conversation with the private sector, making sure that we can have this balance. I guess from my perspective and from the perspective of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, to achieve this, the summit should do a few things. One would be to really call for and support alignment and harmonization among government policies and approaches to agricultural innovation, creating the right kind of local, regional, and global enabling environments. There needs to be alignment and harmonization. And when that is not there, we really see a lot of problems for the private sector as well to play the key role that they can play. It should promote a flexible and agile mindset to innovation. Rarely we see innovation happening within the framework of the status quo. So we need to come to a place where we can have very fast trade-offs that are needed to develop and scale up effective agricultural innovation. We cannot look at things in silos, and we cannot be too rigid in the way that we look at this very important topic. Very, very important as well, and I'm so happy to see Dick as part of this panel. We need to have a user-centric approach for agricultural innovation. Farmers are really the steward of the land, and they've been innovating for millennia. We need them to really drive this forward. So the summit should really have a user-centric approach that takes into consideration all the voices, including farmers, including the private sector, and really bring them together at a very concrete level. I guess from a private sector perspective, something that is really a big, is a core to our organization, is that the private sector should be engaged in the Food System Summit, not only as part of the problem, but most probably as part of the solution. They have a really key role to play. Our CEO, Peter Backer, is the chair of the private sector guiding group at the Food System Summit, and he's been convening CEOs to really galvanize their leadership and this discussion at the Food System Summit. So really we expect from our members to really show up and step up their investment in agricultural innovation and to really bring forward these discussions.
Great, well, thank you very much. I might come back to you and the other panelists, particularly on the point you mentioned on enabling environment at the local level. It would be really important to understand what needs to happen for this scaling of innovation to take off. And talking about practical issues brings me to Ambassador Terri, particularly on this new initiative called the Agriculture Innovation Mission for Climate, AIM for Climate, that was announced by President Biden at the summit on climate that he organized recently. And the UK is supportive of this initiative along other countries as well. So can you just share with us how do you see this initiative really helping to increase investment in agriculture innovation in support of climate action, particularly in the lead up of COP26, as we understand the initiative is going to be launched at COP26?
Great, good. Zituni, good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be on this panel. So thank you so much for inviting me to participate. And really good to hear from the other speakers so far. So I'm going to come back to your question, Zituni. I'm going to make 3 points, and then I'm going to focus on the links to COP26 in particular. So first, to COP20 system. Partnerships important then deliver on the SDGs, but also to deliver on the important to deliver agricultural innovation, and in particular, working with each other, forging alliances, sharing successes, and learning from each other is really important. The second point I'd make is that we really need a shift in how we invest in innovation. We need to target our investments on the greatest challenges, the challenges of people, climate change, and nature. And we need to involve farmers in the solutions and focus about how we scale up technologies and how they're financed so that we can make sure that early stage research actually ends up being used. And thirdly, it's really important to address knowledge gaps, and particularly the gaps in our knowledge about how we actually transform food systems. So, so those 3 points are really important. And of course, we share those points with the AIM initiative as well. And that's why we are focusing on transforming agricultural innovation for people, nature and climate as a key part of our COP26 Nature campaign. And the campaign, which is chaired by FCDO and CCAFS, and I'm looking forward to hearing from Dhanush in just a little bit. The campaign seeks to foster a step change in scale and the pace of agricultural innovation. We aim to mobilise and realign investment in agriculture research and development to achieve climate resilient food systems and to develop innovative solutions that meet the demand and are based on evidence about what works. So we think, and we firmly believe that all of those, the objectives are very strongly aligned with the agricultural innovation mission. And that's why we're very supportive of the initiative. And by the time we reach COP26 in Glasgow, we really hope that the AIM for climate will be able to demonstrate investment in agricultural innovations, and we hope it will provide a platform to discuss and promote priorities for investment. So we hope that as in the run-up to COP26, we'll be able to continue to work with everybody on the panel, and indeed, I think many of our audience today as well, towards building sustainable changes. Thanks, and back over to you, Zituni.
Well, thank you very much, Terri, and we all look very much to working with you, towards COP26 and beyond. I'm very pleased to hear your engagement in the AIM for Climate Initiative. But also, since we're talking about opportunities, thank you very much for highlighting the importance of the Nature campaign, towards COP26. And that brings me nicely to asking the question to Dhanush. In relation to the Food System Summit, but feel free to bring in, some aspects of the Nature campaign as well. So my question to you, given that you're involved in Action Track 3, in particular for the Food System Summit, it would be good just to give an idea to people joining us today of what are the innovative solutions that we're expecting to emerge from the summit, and how can the opportunities we're talking about, like COP26, COP15 and others, really help implement these, including the Nature for Campaign initiative?
Yeah, thanks, Zituni. And I think for me, it's proving to be a challenge because there's been so many great insights already shared. So I mean, I would like to build on that. And especially from Ms. Semedo, I really picked up on 2 points that she made. One was about this is a super year of nature, for nature. And how do we make it a super year? And how do we make it work for nature? And she also stressed on the role of inclusion. And I found that really resonates because we talk about innovation, but as Terri mentioned, this is about innovation for people, nature, and climate. So people, farmers are at the center of this agenda, and look forward to hearing from Dick on that more. But also, Thanavat, you mentioned about the CFS policy recommendations, which the climate change one particularly has a huge focus on innovation within the recommendation. So we're trying to advance that, and that's why we're here at CFS today with this side event. And the third, and this is what you post, Zituni, and Lord Goldsmith also alluded to this, how do we connect these agendas? And Nicoletta set out the ask for the Food System Summit. So I've been quite engaged in Action Track 3 of the Food System Summit, which is on nature positive production. So I'm the innovation lead for the Action Track, but I've also been part of the innovation lever of change for the summit as a whole. So there is a whole huge focus on innovation within the summit, just as there is in COP26. So what we're trying to do is, and as Terri mentioned, we're co-chairing this campaign with FCDO, how can we join those dots and connect these agendas together? And the only way we can make the super year work is if we can connect those agendas. So what are we doing concretely to do that? So I won't go into the COP26 campaign because Terri has quite clearly articulated what the campaign is all about. But how does this relate to the Food System Summit? So within Action Track 3, as people may be aware, currently we received a number of game-changing solutions. So these came from the general public. Anybody can submit. We received hundreds of solutions just in Action Track 3. So we looked at all of them and we picked out those solutions which are innovative in nature. It's about innovation, scaling innovation, shifting the dial on innovation, as Terri put it. So we brought them all together under an umbrella, under a solution cluster, which we're calling Nature Positive Innovation. So it's really looking at how this agenda around COP26 can also help with the Food System Summit. So that's a home for innovation within Action Track 3. So we are sort of building that out now. A number of countries as well as observers have expressed support in this area, and we look forward to building that in the coming months in the lead up to the pre-summit, which FAO and other Rome-based agencies are hosting, and in parallel with the COP discussions. But just maybe going back one more step is that we can't build silos, and this was stressed by one of the speakers. And so we're also making sure that the innovation lever, which is working across all action tracks of the summit, it focuses on 4 areas as well, is also taking this on board. So we kind of made it in a way that the action tracks cluster talks to the innovation levers work, which is around knowledge and technology. And where all of this comes is to transform the way we do agriculture innovation. How can we do things differently, better, realize impact for people, nature, and climate? So that's what we're trying to do by joining up these dots. And I would really encourage people, we have a public forum for the innovation lever on Monday. So if you would like to find out more about the Food Systems Summit and how we're bringing all of these strands together to deliver on these 3 objectives, please do join us on Monday.
Thanks very much, Dhanush. You made some very good points there, and particularly the key point I'm taking away here is to join these dots. And you're right. I mean, the landscape is so busy with these major events, and I think it makes sense, and it makes them more impactful, obviously, if they're linked together. and converging toward delivering something more practical and bigger at the COP26, which is sort of the end stop this year. And I'm sure Terry and the UK presidency are using the same approach in making sure that things coming out for the Food System Summit, the COP15 and others, the G20 conversations actually inform the outcome of COP26 to have something practical that comes out of that. So thanks for that. And I think we heard many colleagues also mentioning the importance of putting farmers at the center, involving farmers, and that's absolutely critical. So it brings me nicely now to asking our fourth panelist, Dick, who's the president of the Uganda National Farmers Federation. So sort of similar question to you. You heard, these various initiatives and events taking place. So from your perspective and the perspective of the farming community, what are your expectations on agricultural innovation from these global events, the COP on biodiversity, the COP on climate change, and how will they really help farmers to scale up, to access innovation and scale up innovation?
Thank you, Peter. And permit me to observe protocol, and also to thank you for giving me opportunity to speak for and on behalf of the farmers here in Uganda, and I believe in Africa, because we have a common characteristic as smallholder farmers. I would like to indicate that I am speaking at the base, at the farm, and it's an honor to get involved with the excellencies, high-level individuals that are on the panel. It's a privilege to share my experience and therefore the expectations of the farmers. First, I would like to thank the previous speakers and the panelists for emphasizing the point of centralizing this agenda to the farmers. For the first time, feeling included in the discussions at global events for solutions that are supposed to change our lives is a plus. And I applaud it on behalf of the farmers in Uganda and in Sub-Saharan Africa in general. I also want to take this opportunity to thank those who invited me and FAO and the World Farmers Organization. It is an honor. Then, therefore, let me go to answer your question. I may not be like the experts, because as a farmer, I would take it as a farmer's perspective and therefore deliver as a farmer in that case, and not necessarily refined. First and foremost, we are expecting democratization or universalization of access to these innovations. Any partnerships that ensure that smallholder farmers who have been marginalized over the years are brought on board, and they harness the benefits of these innovations is going to be very important. The end result will be the integration or inclusion of smallholder farmers in local, national, regional, and international agricultural value chains as a means for poverty eradication, as a means to ending poverty on the globe. So I do think that especially the recent digital solutions is a great opportunity to integrate us, the smallholder farmers, in these value chains as a means to democratizing opportunities. So any partnership that does this from these summits will be very important. Number two, any partnership that promotes, this is a subsection of point number 1, that promotes absorption, access of these innovations. The ambassador, Her Excellency, the DDG mentioned the infrastructure to access internet as a key barrier to access of the innovations, that especially for digital innovations. This is very true. So the summits, all the global events should realize and examine there are available opportunities to partner to increase infrastructure that will support universal access for these innovations. Number 3 is, I have been involved as a leader of the farmers organization here in extending digital solutions. We call it ICT for farmers, that is information, communication, and technology for farmers. And we have discovered a number of challenges. Universalization will face the problem of digital skills. So mobilizing capacity among the farmers as chief beneficiary, a partnership that looks at increasing the capacity empowerment of farmers so that they can absorb these innovations is very important. Number 3, mobilization of innovations themselves. That one was the mobilization of farmers and building their capacity. Innovations are being produced. I thank FAO for all the platforms they have created, but bringing these innovations to the farmer level, that is bringing them to the farmer, to be able to realize farm productivity, to be able to realize sustainable biodiversity to the farm, supporting biodiversity to the farm, is in the next step of challenge after developing the innovations. So it's very critical that the summit examines how do we accelerate reach of these innovations to the farm, facts on the ground, so that we are informed by how many numbers of farmers have been reached and they are now productive. I would like, therefore, to conclude by isolating those two, mobilization of innovations and mobilization of the farmers, creating on-farm platforms that where these innovations are absorbed and they create a real impact on the ground. We must look for indicators to measure our success in this agenda. What will be the measures? If we accept that the farmer should be at the center and the innovations we have generated, we should be measuring ourselves by how many lives of farmers lives have changed, not how many innovations have been created. And in the end, that's the expectation from the summits, how the on-ground change of farmers' lives that these innovations will cause. So I am calling upon, I had the ambassadors mentioning an opportunity to transform. I am calling upon for the summits to look at inclusive transformation. I thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's really great to hear from you and to hear what farmers and the farming community expect in this space of innovation. So the 3 points you highlighted are really helpful for all of us to understand if we really want to scale up innovation and put farmers at the center. So we have to consider this kind of important factors in inclusion, infrastructure, capacity, and empowering farmers to absorb innovation, as you said. So just to remind colleagues, feel free, please, to place your questions on the chat. And also, Ambassador Thiensin and Helena Sedemo, feel free if you want to join in and add any things, just raise your hand, will be with pleasure before we move on to the second part. And I can see that there are some interesting comments here from colleagues. Someone, Alan Motai, who's saying, I'm a farmer and I would like also to add that farmers should be sensitive farmers and inform them of need of using social networks to learn about new innovation. So this is really a confirmation of what Nuwamanya was saying just now, and that's really important. So you mentioned partnerships, and that brings me nicely to the next set of questions and discussion. And back to you, Dhanush, again, talking about, the ensuring this step change in agricultural innovation. And you heard, the importance of inclusion and partnership and empowering farmers. But just looking at the collaboration and partnerships, which are obviously crucial, but what kind of collaboration could be really most effective at bringing about change and including farmers in particular and empowering them?
Thank you, Zitouni, and also for reading out that question from our farmer representative colleague. And maybe I'll use that as an example to launch into this topic. So I think, for example, working with farmers, we have some excellent examples of citizen science, which is emerging in several regions, Ethiopia being one of them. So including farmers in the research and innovation process as a core researcher. And this is gaining momentum in other parts of the world as well. But the problem that I see is that, we have some of these examples of collaboration. So we have this example of working with farmers. We have a great collaboration with FAO. We have a good collaboration with WBCSD. But do we have collaborations that across the innovation ecosystem? And I think that's what we are missing. So this COP26 campaign on transforming agriculture innovation, it envisages moving towards a system of end-to-end innovation. So from the time that an idea is generated to the time it's tested, it's deployed at scale, generating benefits for farmers, those benefits are measured and monitored, and we have those benefits for nature and biodiversity and climate and all of that. We can be convinced about those results. So when I look at this whole system from the perspective of a research organization, we have partnerships in each of these. Some are good, some are okay, but we don't have a system where those partnerships flow seamlessly across the whole system. And I think that's what we're missing. And I think that's what I would like to see from COP26 and Food Systems Summit. So how can we make these exceptions the norm in terms of partnerships as well? And just thinking, some of the country level work that has been mentioned by Lord Goldsmith as well. And I think it all needs to go to the country level and the local level. So FAO has such an incredible network of country offices. So can we work with all FAO country offices and FCDO missions, plus CGIAR institutions and farmer institutions in those countries? So to foster these end-to-end approaches at the country level, because I think that's what we need moving forward.
Thank you. And I can see in the comment there from Nataraja Sabash, who says, I fully agree with you regarding ecosystem collaboration. However, this can be implemented only with local government at the local level. That's a really good point. And if I'll move on to the next question, but if anyone wants to comment on this either now or afterward, feel free. I think it's true that the transformation is important to be highlighted and mobilized at the global level, but the change will only happen when implementation is happening locally, and again, bringing in local farmers as well. And I think there was the importance of inclusion that was highlighted many times. And now it brings me to another question for you, Terri, and particularly on the initiative for just rural transition. That is a priority for the UK for COP26 and beyond. And it would be interesting to hear from you just how do you see this initiative actually ensuring this equitable and equal access to agricultural innovations among farmers that we've been talking about and that Dick highlighted in his intervention?
Yes, thanks very much, Zituni. And yes, the just rural transition, I just like to point out for those who may not be native English speakers that when we talk about just, we mean fair in this context, as you set out, Zituni. And really what we're getting at here is that we absolutely recognise that we can't address the climate and environmental crisis without ensuring everyone has access to the knowledge and the innovation that they need, and the knowledge and innovation that's been developed to meet their needs, and particularly the needs of the poorest. And we are committed to making sure that everyone has fair opportunities, and indeed to prioritising the poorest and ensuring that no one's left behind. So that's really what we're talking about. And I wanted to use an example. So we know that agroecological approaches can support climate change and or can support adaptation to climate change through the diversification of farm products and farm practice, and can really involve communities in the generation of knowledge. But there is a large evidence base that suggests that there's been quite a low adoption of the agroecological approaches, and particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. Perhaps, sometimes because it's just not profitable for farmers to adopt that approach, or there may be other constraints. And what we're really focused on is trying to understand what the constraints are, so that when we're building and investing in innovation, we really understand why previous innovations haven't worked, so that we can really figure out what works, and particularly for those left behind. So that's a real focus of our approach. And that's also why it's so important to work with communities and involve farmers in our innovation and our designs to really understand what's going to work. And of course, another focus is really to work with women and girls who are too often unable to participate in the transformation of food systems, and they need to. So that's another really important focus of our work. And of course, as I said, better understanding what works, as well as understanding what doesn't work, is really important. And I've talked about some of the challenges with agroecological approaches, but you heard from Lord Goldsmith about several very successful examples, and he mentioned the new wheat varieties in maize, and he also talked about really increasing maize yields in Nigeria, and in particular, I'd like to highlight that that it was a low-cost solution in Nigeria that was able to address mold on maize harvests, and it's seen participation in that trial go from 1,000 to 26,000 smallholders in Nigeria, and in fact, almost 100,000 are now using a very similar innovation in 9 different countries in Africa. So so it's not just about learning what doesn't work; it's also about learning about what does work as well. So I think really important to leave no one behind. And Zituni, if I may, I notice there was a question in the chat for Dhanush and myself about climate finance, and as you know, and as DDG Semedo knows, that climate finance is a particular concern for the UK. And we've seen that, particularly with the big climate change funds like the Green Climate Fund, they really have they want to invest more in agriculture in particular, and frankly at the moment their portfolio of agricultural projects is not big enough, and they're really actively trying to expand that, and indeed the UK is working closely with FAO and indeed IFAD to support FAO and IFAD to support developing countries to access climate finance for agricultural solutions, nature-based solutions as well. So absolutely, yes, we really do think climate finance has a key role to play. And of course, for innovation to be successful, it needs finance. We absolutely recognise that. And I'd certainly encourage anyone to get involved and looking at how we can use agricultural innovation in bids for climate finance, and especially to the Green Climate Fund. Thanks. And back over to you, Zituni.
Absolutely, and thank you for bringing that in. I saw that question in chat, and finance is absolutely critical, and you can't achieve any change or any innovation without investment and finance, particularly in the agricultural sector and in developing countries overall. So thanks for bringing that in, absolutely. Let me go back to Nicoletta, just bringing in a discussion on partnerships in particular, and just looking at the private sector role here. And you work in particular with agribusinesses, and it would be good to hear from you just how could the public-private partnership models help this shift that we're talking about on increasing agriculture innovation. From agribusinesses perspective, it would be good to hear from you, what's the thought on that?
Sure, and thanks again so much. I see there are so many interesting questions and comments in the chat, very big questions that would require far more than 1.5 hours to address, but I'll try to incorporate some of them in the answer. I mean, partnerships are key, right? And public-private partnership have been shown to really have a big role to play in scaling and addressing some of these issues. One way they can do that is really to combine also the technical skills and the mandates for both the public and private sector, and really maximize and optimize efficiency when we look at agricultural innovation. Some of the ways that from a private sector perspective, public-private partnership can really shift the dial are, for example, they can help address last mile delivery challenges and access to producers, especially in smallholder context. And this can happen, for example, by leveraging existing distribution and extension channels that governments have available. We've seen a lot of really great examples, especially in the space of digital advisory services and digital bundles around in Ethiopia with Digital Green, and in India, and some other examples of how leveraging existing extension channels at times created for other purposes like healthcare can really help with the scale. The PPPs can really also improve the financial sustainability of investment, especially at the very critical initial stage of innovation where you need that longer term vision. And they can support better targeting of the needs of producers. One of the other challenges, and Dick may be a better person to comment on this, but we've seen at the agribusiness sector, for example, a gap sometimes between the problem and the solution. The problems that farmers are facing and the solutions that the business is putting on the market, there isn't always a 100% match. We need to get better at bridging that gap between the two. Maybe one thing that will be really important to say is that in order to realize these outcomes, public-private partnership need to address or be built on a number of principles to really try and address some of the challenges they face. For example, there needs to be a way to build trust between the private and public sector, and also build capacities within government to really work with the private sector. One of the things that we've observed is that there are certain ministries within governments that are maybe generally they lack the experience to work with the private sector. So there may be an opportunity for cross-pollination between those ministries with ministries like the Ministry of Technology or Infrastructure that might have a better grasp on public-private partnerships, so to really build that inner workings. And also there is a need to balance this type of partnership and outcomes between financial sustainability and a business case for private sector investment and the provision of public goods. Food system transformation will require a good balance of this, but we cannot expect a business to invest if there's no business case behind it. So we need to strike that balance. That will also help with strengthening the targeting of public and private investment into innovation. So in a nutshell, they are critical to shift the dial, but there are certain fine-tuning that probably we haven't seen in all occasions, and that could be really relevant to bring forth through the Food System Summit and COP to really address some of these challenges and build strong guidelines for public-private partnerships.
Okay, great, thanks. And let me just remind everyone, feel free to look at the questions on the chat, because it's true, there's so many there. If you feel there is one you want to take up in particular, please do. I'll ask one in a minute, but let me now go back to Dick and we've been talking about innovation, and obviously what you said, Nicoletta, it's a really broader scale, particularly in terms of investment. I want to zoom in into the need of smallholder farmers in particular, and just to ask you, Adik, how do you see innovation helping farmers, particularly smallholder farmers? What would be needed really to help the smallholder farmer community? So you heard that there are big technologies and big innovation, and that what would work really for the smallholder farmers community?
Thank you, Zaitoon. Let me begin by making a broad statement by saying that first and foremost, as a global community, we also need to innovate on the approaches on how we deliver these innovations. A mixture of top-down and bottom-up, a hybridization of approach to delivering these innovations or solving global problems will be very crucial. Then to your question, let's look at the risks that confront a smallholder farmer. The risks, I will begin by one, and I will just pass over it. It's organizational capacity risk. If you look at the farmers across Africa, smallholder farmers have a smaller average acreage that is under different crops, and they are producing for their own survival. It doesn't make economic sense for a business entity to invest in them. So innovations like digital innovations are helping aggregate these smallholder farmers to achieve what we would call economies of scale, because of large numbers of farmers who might be organized into producing a certain value chain, and it makes it feasible to bring 100 farmers in a village who are producing maize which can be helped put on standards that meet national and regional markets. So some of the needs, some of the innovations that may be useful is those that create opportunities through answering the question of organizational capacity risk, for instance. That as an example, as I've indicated. The second is market risk. Smallholder farmers, it is transactionally difficult for an off-taker to mobilize to get from each and every farmer their 1 kilo, 100 kilos, and the like. So digital solutions enable aggregation, and enabling aggregation, and also enabling, for instance, some of the proposals we are putting to our partners, community stores. All these would help create incentives for the farmers to produce for the market. So market opportunities enshrined in these innovations is very key. The same with inputs. If you have been involved in agriculture here in, especially in Uganda, but generally in Africa, adulteration of inputs at the stage of production is a little bit of a problem. The African Development Bank president is hailed for having changed the agriculture sector in Nigeria by introducing e-voucher system as a way to acquiring inputs. And e-voucher ensured that authentic inputs are received by farmers. And inputs are the first stage of enhancement of productivity. So innovations like ensuring that is very critical. The third is finance. Finance banks do not want to, if I have an opportunity to minimize, reduce my costs of handling clients, I am not going to go for smaller transactions. FAO can tell, because they collect data across the world. I am sure in sub-Saharan Africa, almost 69% or 60% of our citizens are on smallholder farms, and they are possibly all the requirements to acquire finance in banks may be difficult to be verified by banks because of transaction costs. So digital finance, fintechs, it is with digital finance, it's possible to deliver small transactions like even $50 for acquiring 10 kilograms of fertilizer. So identifying those solutions that enable smaller transactions, that enable democratization of incentives to the farmers, and also even the data issue, the data, how collecting all the data to enable the business to plan, the governments to plan, and the farmers themselves to plan. And right. The fourth one was insurance. Nowadays, insurance was not an issue before digitization, but with digital solutions now, it's very proper to sell the weather index insurance, yield insurance, index insurance to the farmers. And they can also visualize changing their lives by application of these tools. Now, Nicoletta mentioned something about the gap between what the private sector would offer and what the farmers would accept. That's why I opened with a broad statement saying that we have to integrate, we have to hybridize approaches, but we are in a learning by doing mood. It is very true that farmers always have different expectations from what the private sector or any other partner is offering. But what I have learned in the last 3 years, it is very important to see the portion, the share of incentives going to the farmer increase. I have learned that the accelerator of transformation is actually the incentives one individual faces, whether you are private sector, whether you are a smallholder farmer. Once the share of your incentives increase, the accelerating to transformation will be easier to do. So we have to see how do we benefit the farmer in all this journey as a very critical partner.
Great, thank you. You raised so many important points, and I'm sure Nicoletta took note, because I wish we had more time to tackle this issue of market access opportunities. It's really important, and you reminded me of this very simple app called M-Pesa that was generated in Kenya, and it's a classic simple example. You just need a mobile phone, but it gives you access to so many things. You can make your payments, you can access the markets, etc. And that's the kind of innovation that needs really to be scaled up, and that's what we're talking about. It should be really available to people in other developing countries, particularly smallholder farmers. So I wish we had more time to talk about this, but you raised so many issues about insurance and inputs and access to finance, etc. I just want to highlight one question here to do with young people and the fact that there is an issue of migration from rural areas to cities, and there is a challenge and a problem in attracting and providing incentives to young people to stay in agriculture, particularly in rural areas. And I just want to have some comments from you before we close. So perhaps I'll start with Dhanush. Just in general, the importance of linking innovation to young people, you would expect that young people, of course, would connect very easily with innovation and the new apps and digitalization. But with the context of agriculture and in the rural areas, and how do we make sure that there is a connection there and people feel attracted in staying in rural areas?
Yeah, thanks, Zituni. And that's a challenge actually we see in the countries that CCAFS works in as well, with young people moving away from farming. And I think in the previous CFS session that we had together with FAO and IFAD as well, there was your colleague from IFAD, counterpart Jo Puri, who made a very cool comment. She said, we should make agriculture research cool again, you know? And I think that really resonated with me. And I think it's that what applies to the whole sector as a whole. How can we make agriculture innovations, these new emerging business models, you mentioned M-Pesa, how can these things be cool for people to be engaging in that? I mean, I think there is a cultural dimension there as well. And in addition to the technical side of designing systems and models of scale, let's focus on how these opportunities are cool and attractive, offering returns which are comparative to other sectors, those kind of issues. So I would just quote Joe here, we should make agriculture as a sector cool again.
That's a good point, thanks. Nicoletta, any thoughts?
I guess echoing all of that Dhanush just said, but perhaps from a private sector perspective, really encourage agribusiness to invest into not only making agricultural cool again and making agricultural research more accessible, but also really divert their investments into developing countries or countries where there is large populations of and a lot of untapped potential and a lot of untapped traditional production methods that need to be brought back to the drawing board and say, okay, innovation doesn't just mean going forward, it means also looking back and looking at what has worked and what can we be bringing back into the system. Maybe I would echo also what Dick said before around agricultural incentives to tackle a lot of the social, environmental, kind of climate, nature topics on the agenda, including some of those that Lord Goldsmith was talking about in his remark. We need to reward farmers. We need to create systems for which there is a compelling business case for producers to protect nature while growing productivity and doing it in a just way. So that financial incentives, if we can get them right, they would really address a lot of the issues and will bring also young people back into the system.
Great, thanks. And I can see on the chat, Chionga Kim, who posted the comment, going green, promoting green practices and technology tend to make agriculture cool to youth. And it's true that young people care about the environment, care about being green and healthy. And that's, I think, part of the incentive to connect with innovation as well. Terri, do you want to add your thought on this issue?
Yes, thank you. So, of course, I absolutely agree that it's culture cool, to make it profitable. But fundamentally, I think young people have to see a sustainable future in agriculture, and that means tackling climate change. And that's why our action towards COP26 is so important. Our nature campaign, it's about trying to attract that finance in the sustainable, climate adaptive technologies that can enable young people to really make a sustainable livelihood from farming. Thanks very much, Zituni, for moderating us, and it's been a fantastic discussion. I've really valued looking at all of the comments in the chat and hearing to all my panelists. Thanks, and over.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at the chat as well. There's some really important comments and questions. As I said, I wish we had time to take all of them. Dick, would you like to add your perspective as well?
Thank you very much. I actually don't differ from everyone who said the next step to attract the young people is to make it cool and profitable. I would front profitable more, because once you have the economic power, it's very easy to even make it cool. So we make it profitable. The return on young people's investment, whether it is time, will determine the next step where we head. I like to conclude by making a request to the dignitaries that are in. I have observed in my last 3 years here that there is a coordination of innovations is also very important. Many farmers, we are being bombarded by different innovations from different people targeting us. So the idea that we should have a coordination regime, a global coordination regime that allows a farmer to absorb and sieve the most beneficial and for all the other criteria, productivity, environmental sustainability, and affordability, accessibility, all these. So the idea of coordinating science, coordinating actors is very essential. I think we should look at that partnering to coordinate, global partnership to coordinate these matters. I thank you.
Thank you. That's a good point, and it reminds us of the point made by Dhanush earlier of joining the dots and collaborating on this. Absolutely, and the point that Terri made also regarding the agriculture innovation mission for climate, which also another opportunity really to ensure some kind of innovation in the agricultural sector. You're absolutely right. Now we came to the end of our session, and I just want to finish by asking each of the panelists, and I'm very pleased that Ambassador Thiensin is still with us as well. You're very welcome to participate here as well. I just want to hear from each of the panelists one final thought from your side, one final message you want to convey to everyone. And I'm just looking for something really brief and short. Feel free to use just one word if you want, but not elaborated comment, something nice and short that people can remember. One thing you want to convey today. And I'll start perhaps with Nicoletta.
Thank you so much. I would say two things. One is true value of food. And I think it really reflects what was said in the chat as well. And also inclusive. It needs to be inclusive. Whatever we do in this space needs to be inclusive. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks. Dhanush?
I have 4 things, but I'll be very quick. So I think we need, first, to transform agriculture innovation, we need more money. So there's more money for agriculture innovation to address climate and nature objectives. So addressing the innovation gap. Second is better money. So there's already $50 to $70 billion which goes into agriculture innovation in the global south. How can these deliver for climate and nature in addition to people? Third is we need better models to scale innovations. And finally, we need inclusion and inclusive dialogue.
Great, thanks. Dick?
It's not a summary, it's a request. A request in which the global community looks at a number of people have said data is the new gold. I am requesting a global data regime that benefits also the smallholder farmers. We do not know the data that is being collected from us, how it's going to, we will take advantage of it as the owners of that data. So a global data management regime that is pro-farmers.
Great, thanks. Terri?
Thank you. So I would say I absolutely agree on the need with what everyone said, particularly on the need for investment in innovation. And I would encourage everyone here to contact their government and ensure that investing in innovations to tackle climate change and help agriculture adapt to climate change should be in their nationally determined contributions as we move towards COP26. So please put investing in innovation in your NDCs. Thanks, and over.
Indeed, excellent. Thank you. I wonder if Ambassador Thiensin still with us. If you want to say something, your thoughts here, that would be welcome. Otherwise, I just want to thank you all, thank all the speakers, all the panelists, and everyone who stayed with us until the end. So I really hope that you found this useful and you learned something on this topic of scaling up agriculture innovation, particularly on the opportunities we talked about to deliver for people, nature, and climate at COP26 and beyond. So thank you all very much. We took note of all your comments, your useful comments and questions, and I said I wish we had more time to discuss these, but thank you again for joining us, and I hope you found this useful, and have a nice day.